Hello and welcome to Pod Group's one third DPI. Today we'll be reviewing the film Parasite. And to introduce ourselves, my name is Kameron Sanders.
Hey y'all, I'm Kayla Cash.
Hey, I'm RaaSia Aaneb.
Hi, I'm Cayla Carroll.
And we will be going through this film piece by piece. So for starters, we are going to tackle the music. And so I'll start. So for Parasite, the score was the most interesting because it was an original score and it was a huge focus on classical music, which kind of added to, I guess, the premium side of the movie on the little dichotomy it was trying to show. I think there were two interesting scenes that really stuck out for me that focused on these long pieces of classical music. One was, I know it was called The Belt of Faith, and it was when they were trying to trick and get the head housekeeper thrown out by convincing her that she had tuberculosis and convincing the family that she was too sick to be able to like take care of them. And so it focused on like, their master plan, and the crescendos and decrescendos all reflected like basically the ill intentions that the family had, along with like, the woman coughing and hacking. And I thought it was really funny because the music was very, very aloof, and it was kind of bouncing along the beat, especially at the beginning when the family was kind of improvising and doing what they could just to be able to trick them and then do their little plots and ploys. But there was also kind of like a sinister background in the back because, of course, they're parasites, so they're trying to leech off of them. And it would fade into the background whenever, like, they just try to normally talk and they're just trying to convince her and be funny. But then as soon as it would cut back to, the woman hacking, or of course the husband showing that there was blood in the trash can, you would just hear the music get extremely loud and bombastic, just to kind of reflect, I guess, not necessarily the direness, but how drastic of what they're doing and how just basically the magnitude that this woman is just as needy as them and they are kind of throwing her out of her own job unfairly. And so that piece stuck with me, along with the last scene, which was when, of course, the crazy man in the basement just got out and they were having a party. So what we saw was an opera singer, of course, singing on the lawn, and everything was nice and pristine. Of course, she was wearing all white, and it was kind of to have the pristineness of the party while someone was kind of getting their head beaten in the background because the guy just escaped. And so it was funny to me when the peaceful operness kind of just instantly stopped as soon as everybody saw him and they registered that this crazy man with blood on his face. And so it was kind of just a very loud silence to me. But then as soon as the daughter gets stabbed, everybody starts screaming. And then sinister chords start playing, which I felt was really kind of out of place for the movie, but it also reminded you that this was a psychological horror film. So, you got to hear like the regular chords that you'd hear in like Nightmare on Elm Street or something. But then a sinister solo cello started playing, which I noticed was one of the composer's favorite instruments, but it was just having its own little solo piece with ominous tones rising in the background as everything was happening and the husband was trying to get his family together and people were getting stabbed left and right. But it kind of came to a huge crescendo into a halt when we saw the husband of the family stab the the rich guys, like he stabbed the rich guy, and it halted when he started running and he was becoming the new man in the basement. And so overall, I felt like the music really reflected, especially with classical music being associated with higher class people, the kind of the beauty behind the madness in the movie, because we got to see a lot of atrocities committed on screen and a lot of like, I guess, sneaky behavior committed on screen with this beautiful music being played in the background, kind of to reflect how it's a high class, quote unquote, beautiful family, but things making that work are these kind of grimy tactics and these undercut things that the parasitic family is doing to not only the housekeepers but also to the family that they're supposed to be taking care of. So, does anybody else have anything to talk about when it comes to the music? Okay, so the next thing we'll be talking about is the actors and casting.
Okay, so for the actors, I thought it was interesting that the mother of the wealthy family, the Park family, was very interested in having her children get like the best education possible, by hiring, these seemingly well-known educators or whatever. Also thought it was interesting that the wealthy was very naive and gullible, and they fell for really anything, especially the mother. And the Kim family, they were very adamant to get their entire family working. I mean, for a good cause, because they were poor, definitely poor. And I thought it was interesting, like the entire film, it was basically acting within acting. Like, of course, there's actors playing Parasite, but the actors playing Parasite are acting within the film, if that makes sense. Specifically the Kim family, because they're poor playing to be rich. And I want to shout out Desong. He was like a very intelligent and like extraordinary child to me. Like he caught on to a lot of things, even though he had like trauma at such a young age. He caught on to things like the sense of smell, which we'll get into later. But yeah, that's what I had for actors and casting. If anybody wants to add on to anything, be my guest.
Yeah, I agree with what you said about the song. When as soon as he pointed out that they all have the same smell, I was like, "Oh, the movie is over. It's done." Because like, what little kid is able to distinguish like that multiple people in their house that are new have all the same smell? In that instant, as a mom, I would have been like, "Bro, what you mean?" Like, exactly. I would like done my investigation. Like the whole family was so naive. I feel like there was no background checks, no nothing. It was just like, okay, let these new people in my house. So yeah, that was very interesting to me. Just how the whole casting of the rich family was just kind of like just open to anything really. Like they were like, oh, we're so secure, but in reality, like they didn't do enough checking. So yeah.
I agree with also what you said about like acting within acting. Because for me, I guess the funniest and the most tense scene of the movie was when the rich family was away and they were, of course, just drinking themselves to death and they were all having fun. Then they went downstairs and that whole fiasco happened. And then suddenly they had to call home. And so it was just like a whole bunch of stuff happening and there a whole bunch of improv just happening for them, and they have to like especially the dude army crawling across and the call coming and them just being like, oh yeah, you're doing this and this and that, and meanwhile this dude's just planking in the middle of the floor and just slowly like crawling like down the stairs because they're so desperate, like because they're caught up in their own acting that it kind of costs them.
Right.
And so I think that they did a pretty good job. But if that's all for the actors and casting, we're now going to the next part, which would be editing and camera work.
Okay, so I'll begin with camera work and editing. First, I'd like to say that I think that the editor used framing when using the camera to automatically draw the focus of the viewer to like the subject, and it's almost like the object of the scene is placed in a way so that we can only focus on certain like parts of it. So I can give examples, like sometimes they would give a close-up shot where it would just be very close on the character's face, and this way the viewers are able to it's able to portray the feelings and the inner conflict of the character. It was one scene where they were showing, I forgot who it was, like the name, but they were showing like the nervousness, and it's clear you can see like how nervous they are because they want to use a close-up shots for that. But like in other cases for where it's kind of not too close, when they showed the mother, they showed her in the kitchen, but they showed the wine bottles to show like she's rich, and but they still want to show her to the audience, but not too close. It's not really about her expression, but like her not her well-being, but her living environment, trying to show who she is. But for some angles, like high angles, this is also a way for the characters, we're not on the psychological part yet, but for them to show like their weakness and promotes empathy for the subject in the viewer's mind. And for that high angle, it's just showing, you know, mercy and helpless. But for a lower angle, sometimes that's just showing like status of power to that subject. And also, I'd like to say how the director implemented different lighting, different uses of lighting. So for the different uses of lighting between rich and poor. So for the rich, like they had sun during all the daytime when the sun was up, but like for the poor, there was not like a lot of sunlight that was being shown. And another thing I like to say were almost like these shots throughout the film, like different uses of shots and different types were intentional. Like the director wanted us to feel like we were almost getting somewhere, but then a sense that like we would never like fully arrive there, and also using like foreshadowing to make us like want to keep moving forward with the movie and keep us interested. So that's pretty much all I have to say. If anybody else wants to add something.
I think
No, I
nailed it.
feel like you
Yeah.
pretty much summed that up.
Yeah, I think you got it. I think that honestly covers it. But I guess that's all for that. And moving on to the next one, you'll be talking about the script.
Oh yeah, that's me. Okay. Well, to start off, I had no idea, like for the longest, I had no idea why the name of the movie was Parasite. I was just like, I was thinking that it was gonna be something crazy, like actual parasites or something like that. I was like, I don't get it. And it didn't hit me until I saw like how like it was like in the middle, well, almost to the end of the movie, where the old maid had her husband in the basement and she was taking stuff for them too. And I was like, oh my goodness, that's such a smart name for the movie. Like, I sounded so dumb, but I was like, that's such a smart name for the movie. Like, everybody's just taking from this one family. So I just had to put that out there. Slow moment. But yeah, I felt like it was interesting, like how each of the families in the movie had like their own focus. Like the rich family, their focus was their children's education and like just making sure they had the best. For the poor family, theirs was to just get everybody a job, basically just have a better lifestyle for each other. And basically, if you get one put on, like put the rest of the family on. And then for the other poor family, the couple, it was more or less, it seemed like more just keeping the husband alive and yeah, just not getting found out. So it just showed that everybody had like different agendas, and it shows that we don't know what's going on with the person next to us. So I felt like that was interesting. And you could really tell throughout the whole movie that it was like family over everything. Like everybody put their family first, which you don't really see that much kind of in like I'm not gonna say like American movies, but yeah, American movies, like they'll like diss their family or they'll be like, oh no, like they'll be okay, like they can get it out themselves. But in this movie, everybody was just like, if I make it, you make it too. And I felt like that was like really important. And And then I felt like going back to like the smell and how the smell was triggering. I find it very interesting, like all throughout this movie, when the rich husband was just like, yeah, he always reaches that line, but it's just his smell. And you could just see that the dad was just getting like more and more. He was emotionally hurt, but he was just getting more and more fed up, which ended up leading to the scene at the end where he just decided to just kill the dad. Because at first I was just like, why would you act in such a rash way? But when I thought about it, you feel like you're being bullied or you're just being made fun of by somebody who doesn't even know anything about you or what you've had to go through. Like, I can understand to get like a little bit pent up and being like, yeah, I'm gonna stab you. Like, not to that extreme, but like I was able to understand basically where he was coming from. And it just I like how the what's it called? The director was able to implement the smell. Like, I would never think implement smell to make somebody kill somebody. But I like how he was able to do that all throughout the movie and just show how like little triggers can just set somebody off. But for that, that's really what I had to say about script. If anybody has anything else to say, then y'all got it.
I definitely agree. I think the smell was a big part of that, and I want to touch more on that later when we get on to another section. But I think it was just very, very well written, especially like I said with the title, considering how they're all reaching behind one family in particular, and just their naivety to the whole thing really, really pissed me off because it's just like you don't see what's happening, but at the same time, it's like it adds on to, I guess, the psychology of the film. But if that's all we have to say for the script, we will now be moving on to the settings and the costumes.
Yeah, so the costume basically symbolized financial status. So of course, the Kim family, they had old and arguably dirty clothes most of the time when they were home or not at the Park family house. And the Park family, they had suits, well-kept uniforms. Even the housekeeper had on like a well-kept uniform. And another point, I'm trying to say, how the costume symbolizes financial status. When the daughter of the Kim family left her underwear, her panties, in the car, and then the mom found them, or actually the father found them and then showed them the mom and whatever. In the scene when they were, having their sexual moment, the mother hinted at, or no, the father hinted at, oh, you got them panties that's like that, the poor hoes be wearing or whatever, something like that, he said along those lines, which I thought was interesting because I mean, like, you don't know who underwear that was. But anyway, I thought that was interesting how they basically symbolize costume with, the financial ranking in that area. Also, the setting, basically the varying lifestyles of their home. So the Kim family, they lived in basically like a small basement or whatever. And, the Park family had like a home that they could call like an architectural masterpiece. So yeah, definitely the costumes and the setting symbolize like the varying financial status between the Kim and the Park family. So that's what I have. Anybody wants to add?
I also thought a big symbolism that they had was in the Kim family's house, the toilet was the highest thing in the building. And I found that very, very funny because it's, a toilet. but it's just like that's the
True.
most kind of prestigious thing they have. And then when the flood came, it was just sputtering, and it was mainly causing mess and crap to literally get everywhere.
Right.
So it kind of like that whole scene kind of just showed, the whole term, like, crap hitting the fan or whatever it is, except this time they're all swimming in it because they tried to have a whole fun night out, and now, kind of came back on them. So that's how I at least felt about that. But I think that's really good for the settings and costumes. So last thing we'll be touching on is the psychological impact of the film. And I'll start with a little bit on, I guess, going back to what we were talking about in the script, where it's the smell, because the film, of course, is a huge satire on, I guess, high and low class and how they perceive people. Just the whole thing of smell and how poor people have the smell and how people on a subway have a smell. And then, of course, just visibly like holding their nose, especially in a situation where you just saw one of your workers get stabbed. I just really found it as a brutal perspective on, I guess, both capitalism and on both how, I guess, the rich perceive the lower class. Like, they don't really see them as like human beings with feelings, or someone that's like, even as part of their family, even though they, of course, the Kim family did, while they were leeching off for them, they did still do a lot. They still, of course, drove them to and from. They still basically took care of their basic necessities. But at the end of the day, they were disposable. Just like how the housekeeper, she had her feelings hurt because she was disposable, where it's just like, if you can't do your job, we will find someone to do your job for you. You're not that important. And it kind of just goes to show you that we look at the lower class, quote unquote, or people who work those jobs in just such a very, very crap way. And the movie captures that brilliantly.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting because, like, to an extent, like the lower class is like the smart class. I mean, that's how they convey it in the film. Like, they're smart, they're witty, they think on their toes, they have plans. The higher class with the wealthy or whatever, they're more, kind of slow. Not slow, I'm sorry. Not as, smart or intelligent, but they just have money to back up their power. You see what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, it's like the higher class, they're too carefree. It's like, well, now that we're rich, haha, we have nothing to worry about. This can't happen. Almost like I can't think of the word, but like it can't happen to them, basically. I can't be there in that place. This won't happen to me. And the poor people or the less wealthy people are kind of like, there's always room to improve. We can always get more. And yeah, like you were saying, you got to be quick on your feet. You got to be witty. You got to think about ways to get out of certain situations, how to get placed in certain positions. So yeah, I feel like that was very interesting to see as well. Because I don't think they were necessarily dumb.
Right.
But it's like their mindset is a
difference.
whole different place. Yeah, they're thinking about totally different things. It's like, okay, you really don't care. So yeah.
Does anybody else have anything to say? Well,
I also wanted to bring up, my fault.
I
wanted to bring up like the whole planning thing. The Kim family was always like adamant about, oh, what's the plan? Do we have a plan for that? Like, everything was calculated for, considered. Like, they even had a whole script for the father, to try to get like the mother a job. It was like the whole thing, like with the planning. And then I remember, I think the father of the Kim family, he was like, I have a plan, but he never told like his family the plan or whatever. And I don't know if his plan was to end up under the basement at the Park family house, but I just thought that whole full circle moment was like, oh wow, he underneath their house, which I honestly didn't know where that man went. But the fact that he was under there, I was like, wow, this is like writer genius. I loved it.
I agree. I thought it was actually pretty dark because I took it as like the cycle continues. You know, he replaced the man as the new man underneath the house. And then, of course, there was like the tone of like the son being like, oh, yeah, you know, someday I'm going to buy it and you're going to be able to come upstairs. And they had that whole
Mhm.
dream sequence where he was doing that. But you know, the odds of that happening, especially when they're talking about like the cost of the house and everything at the beginning, is
Right.
like slim to none. And so it's like a hopeful dream. And it's kind of a way of like how the lower class is like, oh, yeah, you know, all you got to do is just go to college and get a good job. And you're just
Mhm.
as rich as these people who have just made it in life. And it's just like, it's not the entire reality. And while there is a chance, it's very, very unlikely. And it's looking like he's going to go crazy. And then, you know,
Right.
the whole thing's gonna start all over again. But you know, that captures the genius of the movie for me. But okay. Thank you guys for listening. And this is Group 1 signing out.